sit down. It's kind of late here for me. It's 2:19 in the morning. But this has taken several days to put together. So you'll see. A lot of friends contributed a lot of music to present to you. See you shortly.
Taka taka doom, taka doom, talan kadoom, taka doom, taka taka doom, taka doom, talan kadoom, taka doom, taka taka doom, taka doom, talan kadoom, taka doom, taka taka doom, taka doom, talan kadoom, taka doom, taka taka doom, taka doom, talan kadoom, taka doom, taka taka doom, taka doom, talan kadoom, taka doom, taka taka doom, taka doom, talan kadoom, taka doom, taka taka doom, taka doom, talan kadoom, taka doom, taka taka doom, taka doom, talan kadoom, taka doom, taka taka doom, taka doom, talan kadoom, taka doom, taka taka doom, taka doom, talan kadoom, taka doom, taka taka doom, taka doom, talan kadoom, taka doom, taka taka doom, taka doom, talan kadoom, taka doom, taka taka doom, taka doom, talan kadoom, taka doom, taka taka doom, taka doom, talan kadoom.
Welcome everybody. Sunday evening culture. Tonight, bring you back to my roots. Bring in some old friends. Some old language. Language I can speak worldwide. Be right back. Almost there. I said, the old world. The world I used to know. Like with all these behind me. I own a lot of these. They're all in America. So, how are you guys this evening? Is it good in America? I don't know if everyone's in America, or I know some are in Canada. We might have some people staying up late in England, which means it's midnight 25. It's 2:25 in the morning here. And as I am ought to do, are you hearing me fine? Is everything good? And actually, our friend Nicholas is here. I want to point out the reason why we had an issue last night with a audio, if you will, an echo. Is that the camera that's filming has its own built-in mic that was just activated. So like right now, if I turn it on, you can hear it. But anyway, so I will remember these basics. I'm an audio wiring person. Did you catch our discussion earlier with Sean Penner, our wonderful brother and friend? I have good news and I have difficult news. The difficult news I'll put first. We keep adding and subtracting subscribers. It's stuck. And it's stuck in a way that I'm going to just say some of it's economy. I'm in the same boat. You know, there are times where I just can't infinitely keep giving to certain accounts. In fact, there's a couple accounts I'm subscribed to out of honor. I be honest, I don't have the time to read everyone that I subscribe to either. There is one difference. Aside from the fact that I am doing these culture shows, the journalism here goes into actually helping people using the pen, camera, microphone, wiring, and intellect to get something done. So there are a few people behind the scenes. In fact, I see you in the room. I'm not going to call you out of kindness and respect, who have made sure that the gaps for this month have been okay. I think we're fine. Tomorrow is Monday, or actually technically for me it is Monday. So that is, but this is part of why I like to do these sort of other segments. And is the mix with Glenn's background voice, is that okay? I mean, is it the same? Is it just okay enough behind? I haven't quite introduced you to Glenn, if you don't already know who Glenn Velez is. By show of hands in the audience here, how many people already know who Glenn Velez or frame drums or these traditions, if you already know about this? Maybe you come from somewhere where the tambourine is a part of what you do in life. If you were Southern Italian, for instance, and you have the tamborello and the tamorniada. And actually, one thing I'll say ahead of the show is it turned out to be a different kind of show than I imagined. Because I could do this forever. I have nearly a PhD in frame drums. Only Glenn and a handful of people with me know this shit more than I do. I have been the webmaster for the top frame drums of the world. From Glenn, Alessandro Belloni, Arnaldo Vaca, Abos Cosima, Trici Sankaren, Cooperman Fife and drums, Eckerman drums, Yusuf Sharonik, Christopher Hardy. I'm fucking up here because there's so many friends. People who are not with us anymore. So I'm laughing because my brain goes, please go down the client list. It's 27 years of clients. Anyway, you'll see a little bit of that tonight because a lot of what I'm presenting tonight, I did not film. And I'm using it to demonstrate Glenn. Mirat donated some of the film. So there's a solo that I will show Glenn after the interview. Then Mirat, I have a couple of videos for him also, and I'll explain who Mirat is. Head of the Tambura Mundi Festival in Europe out of Friedberg. And then my friend April Centrone, one of my big heroes in the music world. She is an expert in the, shall we say, Near East, Mid East, Moroccan, etc. drumming. She's basically like a sister to me. Zohar Fresco. I first heard Zohar Fresco in a group called the Ziriab Trio straight up classical Middle Eastern music that is big deal. And these are people I've known as long as I've been an adult, so there's a lot of stuff that I could have picked, and it was really hard. Andrea Piccioni tonight, my Italian brother, who's also a great groove master. He's part of the same thing, this pantheon of new artists who have pushed it forward into the modern age. And he got a few bits from him that he donated. Rui Silva is going to play a segment on what's called a dufe, an instrument from Portugal. Then we have, of course, some music from Ukraine. I have some Andriy Levchenko. In fact, he made this drum here, my bubon behind me. If I can, while I'm wiring, I'm trying to find some segments I downloaded that I lost, because I have a bazillion video files. If you don't know this, there are 8 hard drives that are 5 terabytes apiece. Let's see, no. There's 5 on there, 5 on that shelf. There's 3 on the desk and 1 behind me. So do the math. So I have some music from Ukraine, of course. But there's a lot of segments that I may squeeze them in if I can, but I'm going to verbalize past them a little bit as we go through, and I'm going to talk a little bit about these drums from around the world. And, of course, India, big deal for me. You will see my teacher. You will see an interview, which I rarely sit around on camera, an interview with me and my teacher, Ganesh Kumar. Then we're going to have a great final segments with my other teacher from Uzbekistan, Abos Kasimov, who is... Abos is in a world of his own. You're just going to love it. I'll tell you some funny stories when we get to that segment. And then the final section will be with a very special concert for a late master who's not in our world anymore with us, John Bergamo. Now, John doesn't play in this. This was a tribute that came about from a bad habit of mine to come up with ideas and say, why don't we? And then all of a sudden it becomes a lot of work. In this case, the lot of work was a tribute to John Bergamo with his students, with my friend Pandit Swapan Chowdhury, a great Indian tabla player, and my friend Homad Pourmehdi. Now, the theme for that is that guys in the ensemble will be playing various frame drums and tambourines, and then Homad Pourmehdi will be playing the large def, the Persian drum. He also plays tombak in there. So got just an incredible fucking set for you. But let me be clear up front. There are so many styles of frame drums around the world. My brain has exploded trying to convey them to you. But I have good news. I'm an expert webmaster forever. I have worked with the best frame drummers forever. They're my friends. And slowly but surely, we're actually going to relaunch again a frame drum site that's kind of it's perked up and then it's died and perked up and died. And actually part of it, and I won't laugh about it, it's because I have friends who aren't in this world anymore. I have a wonderful buddy years ago out of Dallas, and he ran a thing called Rhythm Web. And it was, he's just one of these people who just found different types of instruments around the world interesting, so he'd find a little photo and take and put that stuff together, you know. So Stu, shows like this are dedicated to guys like him. And when I was a neophyte, like web guy, here's what would happen. I may find these photos in a little bit when I get to this. We would go to the Percussive Arts Society International Conference, otherwise known as PASIC. It's like the trade show for drum dorks and, geeks. Cool guys and ladies. It's actually very much a classical percussion, marimbas and timpanis and that type of thing originally. But the world hand drum freaks like us tended to invade it, especially in a particular era that is not there anymore. Now, the community's thriving in different ways. But it's, in the case of PASIC, the hand drumming community or the drumming community at large just changes a lot. So years ago, before I got really into the counterterrorism work, my whole life was surrounded by basically walking down the halls of PASIC and talking to Louis Belson, great jazz drummer, or sitting next to Babatunde Olatunji, the fantastic Nigerian drum master, shooting the shit with John Bergamo, who I don't have a clip tonight. I couldn't get it edited in time. John Bergamo was about 5 foot, but in my brain he was like 1,000 foot, right? And John Bergamo was a hand drummer who played on, God, everything. I mean, he played with Frank Zappa, George Crumb, I Love Dr. Moreau soundtrack, you name it, he was the guy. He knew how to play everything. And there were 3 guys I interviewed back then on stage forever ago, whatever year that was, 2006. They were the original professors of world music in colleges who brought gamelan in and djembe and tabla and you know, shiko or something, you know. And then, you know, I'm 56. There's a whole generation now that does that on YouTube like it's no big deal. So, you know what? I happen to look at our clock here. I see some wonderful friends here. How are you this evening? We are at 2:35. I have a very interesting program for you tonight. It is built in an accidental tradition I fell into of frame drums and tambourine makers. And as the story goes, many, many years ago, I'm sorry, we lost Glenn's sound. We need Glenn's voice while we're listening to this. Thank you. Let's see if we can get this right. So the ancient world was filled with tambourines. It's a very simple drum to play and construct. But we know through a range of statues, iconography, paintings, and evolved traditions, no less, where these instruments show up in a range of cultures. I am going to actually pull Glenn's voice out. Hi, Glenn. Goodbye, Glenn, for now. Okay, thank you. And whether it's, you know, throughout Greece or Rome, especially, hold on, keys. Egypt, you can see, and I'm sorry, some of these, I know I've got it in a inside of a frame, but I'm going to put this on the Frame Drum website. Don't worry, everything we can find, we will have. And you know, across the world, especially, I noticed, you know, in Italy, there's just so many paintings that are, you know, girl with tambourine or girl with tamborello. You know, in the field, etc. There's statues in Egypt and statues in, you know, Mesopotamian areas that, you know, show as far back as Ur. You know, we have these instruments in Italy, especially, like I said, the paintings are frequently showing in the frescoes. So we know how far back these instruments go. Now, also another thing is that in the Egyptian traditions, there were sort of 2 types of drum realities that would work together. So sistrums that had large rails of cymbals and large drums on, basically like large frame drums about the size of the one. Hold on, which side? The one with the lights in it. You know, huge drums that they would hit with a stick. The combination of those eventually showed that, you know, it was part of the Dionysian rite and the Egyptian rite of those days. Sorry, not the Dionysian, but the Egyptian rite of those days. Bacchus. And it's hard to find my photos on such short notice. I actually have an archive in Houston that's extremely blown up and well preserved. In fact, some of them are from museums, just like Glenn Velez will mention in the interview. Museums I happen to be near. I his phone. Hey man, guess what I found? Did you ever see one of these? So it's a very common. And now, for instance, look at the one that she's playing. That's clearly a tamborello, but the instrument over my shoulder here, the bubon from Ukraine, this one's made by Andrei Levchenko, is imperceivably the same. You know, it's like I could literally hold up the 2 and hand technique if I was to, you know, try to play it tamborello style, South Italy. You couldn't tell the difference. The only slight difference is that this is a wee bit heavier. So, but you know what? I think the better way is to just show you how these things work. What do you think? Are you ready? How are you guys doing? welcome. Sunday night. It is what, 7:39 East Coast time, 6:39 Central, United States of America. And for me, it is 2:30 in the morning. So if you don't think I love you, what do you think I did all this for? We literally have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. We got a lot of acts. So guess what? We're going to start. And I hate to hit you with the biggest, best, a badass of all of them, but I have an attitude problem. baby. What y'all thinking that shit, Holmes? Think you can do some of that? Oh my God, is there actual music written for the drums, or is it improv? Who teaches technique? In fact, it's both. There is compositional structure behind it. Like you may have heard I jumped in there verbally. Doom tak tak doom tak 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 doom tak tak doom tak doom tak tak doom tak 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 doom tak tak doom tak. Everyone who knows their Arabic ika, the rhythms, we all know this. These, Masmodi, Maksum, Baladi. We have to. Shui shui. So yes, so that's the first instrument. The rick is a central instrument. You'll see it a couple of times tonight. A central instrument in Middle Eastern music and Egyptian, especially classical music. There are some fantastic masters throughout the ages, but it's hard to explain how an instrument like the rick, the tambourine, is like more important than the dumbek. If you get, because the dumbek's very fiery, but if you think about it, the dumbek is a very it's an evolution, because you have goblet drums and the barrel drums like djembe have a sound chamber built into it. These little suckers, they have no sound chambers. The sound chamber, the definition of a frame drum is any drum whose shell is shallower than the diameter of the head. So the entire sound chamber is essentially in here, right? And that provides for different types of techniques. So like the Italian tamburillos use these techniques like these triplets. Bump, 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 bump. I don't want to play it really loud. It's 2:00 in the morning here. People will piss off. I like my neighbors. But also you saw that Glenn was using what we call cabaret position. Again, it's kind of loud. Doom tak 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 doom tak tak doom tak 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 doom tak tak doom. So we use it as an articulation inside the performance. And this is actually a pandeiro from Brazil. This one made by Cooperman, my drum company. In fact, 1, 2, 3 of those are from Cooperman. The other one's from Meinl. I am, in fact, the only counterterrorism guy endorsed by a drum company. Go put that in the books. Now, the big one behind me, the one with the lights in it, and God bless you, Patrick. I love you for sending that to me for my sanity in war. But that literally is my sanity war drum. During blackouts, I needed lights. So I found a LED strip for $10. Wired it in. It's USB powered. I can go anywhere, and I can both provide lights and music. But let me make a point. I've been here 4 years. You know how many videos exist on the internet of me playing music anywhere? 0. The priority is to get through this war, to look after the Ukrainians around me, to use the cameras, the light, the pen for Ukrainians. But I do love having my gear. So anyway, I did finally play this year for the first time in 4 years here. And when they learned out I actually know my shit, it was a really good thing. Now, how do I know my shit? Because I basically ripped off Glenn Velez. I love you, Glenn. You're the best. You created an art form that the rest of us aspire to create. Now, what I'm about to play for you is a hybrid. You saw the rick in the first part. You saw the tar. Now, the tar is a very simple frame drum from North Africa. You see them from Morocco throughout. Actually, through that whole area, you see them called different things as well, not just tar. But through that whole region, very simple drums. I have some that were made in Morocco. They're like $25 a pop, maybe a little bit more now. Very simple instruments, played very well. And if I had my dream tonight, meaning if I could do a 10-hour broadcast for you, and I may do one in the future like this, I literally can find the segments to show you Nawa tradition in Morocco, Tunisian, Algerian, etc. But did I tell you I have good news for you? Framedrums.org, pretty easy to remember, is a site I built for years, and I just rebuilt it. I'm putting a lot of these things in there. It's going to evolve very rapidly over the next few months as my friends finally catch on that I've been building this to help them get their word out there about their traditions. But essentially, I'm giving it another kickstart. And in between there's actually one guy who did something that no one else did, and that's Glenn Velez. See, the other traditions were very much like here in playing bubon. The musical rhythms and making and tradition were extremely located in what Ukrainian folk music does. It's dance music, for one. It's folkloric dance music. In the Crimean tradition, which I also I have some segments, I just didn't have them racked up for tonight, but I will get them together. And I'm going to talk about the style in a bit when I play my Uzbek teacher's music, because the style is very similar. The crossbreed of Glenn's style did not exist in these connections, but we do have like I have a great friend now here, Denis Vasilev, who's in Zaporizhia, and we both play this tradition I'm about to show you under the Glenn Velez tradition, a thing that no one else quite does. So without any further chapping and yapping by Chris, let me show you the Bowron as played by Glenn Velez. Not the Irish style Bowron. This. All right. So to our wonderful viewers, let me just welcome my dear friend and just longtime influence and awesome guy, Glenn Velez. How are you, Glenn? How are things?
I'm doing great, Chris. It's good to see you.
Likewise. So I've been telling my viewers that I have a long history in dealing with culture, and I felt it was important to bring them to sort of like the musical Silk Road of my influences, and there's no way I could do that without a guy who sort of in a different way did the same thing. So, Glenn, if you wouldn't mind talking to our friends about how you were inspired by your uncle, you wound up going to music school, but then you found this other non-traditional instrument to America that turned out to be the most traditional instrument in the world.
hmm Yeah, it was just I think a big part of that aspect of it is being in New York. And when I started to study with Fred Hinger at Manhattan School of Music, famous timpanist, he told me about an earlier student named Russ Hartenberger.
Right.
And this is one of the key members of Nexus, famous percussion group here in the U.S. And Russ, when I started to play with Steve Reich, was also playing with Steve Reich. And he was telling me about his studies with his South Indian drum teacher, Ramnath Raghavan. And that's really how I started the whole journey in terms of this non-traditional instrument in terms of Western percussion.
So you played one, just for our viewers, you played one similar to this synthetic instrument that's known as the kanjira.
Yeah.
You got to see one of those
Well, he
early
had,
on.
yeah. Ramnad Raghavan, he had several kanjuras, with the lizard skin. So I
Hmm.
started off on that because at that point, there was no synthetic
Oh,
version.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah. That comes later because of you and Remo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, um, so I started to study with Raghavan. He came to my apartment in New York City, and he saw a tambourine on the wall in my
Hmm.
apartment and said, "We play that kind of instrument in South India." So we took that down and he played, and I said, "Wow, I never saw anything like that." And I said, "Let's study that," because we were studying Mridangam. And the
Right, right.
Mridangam, you know, it doesn't look like a big drum, but it weighs a ton.
Yeah.
So anything that is not easy to carry, I always was kind of gravitated towards something more easy to
Right,
carry.
right.
So, but I didn't know about frame drums at that point. So we said, let's start to study that. And that's how I got into it.
Hmm.
So that was in 1977.
Hmm.
So I just started to look around for other frame drums. I realized this is it's like a tambourine, except it only has one little jingle. It's very small.
Right.
So I started to realize, I thought about it and realized, well, I think they're into it in the Middle East. So
Hmm.
gradually I just was looking for all the places that there was uh, frame drum playing in a
Yeah.
deeper way. Anything that is
And New York had
not
that
easy to
sort of
carry,
that good
I
gumbo where a
always
little
was
bit
kind of
everybody
gravitated
is
towards
accessible.
something
Yeah.
more easy. Yeah, that was a big factor
The New
also.
York area in general. Yeah.
Yeah, it had all these communities of people from other places, and so they're quite a big Arabic community. So I
Hmm.
found a teacher, Hannah Merij, who was a Rick player. His
Hmm.
his brother was a very famous Rick player, Michel Merij,
Right, right.
and so I started to study with those types of instruments. And the more I did, the more I liked it, and the more I realized how much it really fit my personality more because small instrument, portable instrument, playing with the hands as opposed to playing with sticks. Well,
Hmm.
this was really the frame drum was my introduction to playing with the hands as opposed
Right.
to playing with sticks. And that was a big factor for me because had never played with my hands. It's always sticks. So
Right.
playing with hands really is a very, very different kind of experience. So that was
And
also
and the
important.
scene back then was very you had emergent strong improv scene where what was sort of prescribed as jazz or prescribed as fusion didn't matter as much, right? You could explore, from what I understand. Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Basically, I came in contact with a guy, Charlie Morrow.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And he was very active in the free improvisation scene.
Hmm.
So, in other words, there was no category. The people just got together and improvised without any category.
Wow.
And that was a very fortuitous experience for me because up to that point, when I studied Arabic or I studied South Indian, with very, very specific techniques, specific ways of playing from the traditional standpoint of these different
Sure.
cultures. And playing with Charlie and his group of people that he had around him was just do whatever you want to do that sounds cool to you and sounds musical and is fun. So that allowed me to take the frame drums and just start to experiment with them and see what they fit into and how they could relate to flutes or all kinds of other instruments.
Right. I mean, some of the sweetest sounds in my whole life, are the sounds of you with Steve Gorn and Howard weaving a rhythm with a melody contrast of melodies, having someone behind you playing euphonium, or like for the viewers, my first experience hearing you was after Ray Dillard, our mutual friend, said check out Glenn Velez, was Canyon and the warning that the bendir had a buzzing sound in it, and then listening to this very otherworldly sound, not what I was used to at all. Mm-hmm. And it opened up a whole different verbal vocabulary that was not about the drum strokes you and I would know, but just the tonalities, the textures were wider. And, those interactions are incredible to this very day.
Yeah, I mean, the quality of the frame drum, that, especially the bendir, with the buzzing, mm-hmm. that caused a lot of upheaval when I first started to use that drum, because it really, for people that are concerned about noise mm-hmm. in the speakers, etc., that mm-hmm. reminded them of that. And so there was a lot of pushback, against the bendir. The engineers were saying, sounds like feedback or something. It sounds like we got a problem.
Right.
Yeah, but otherwise the frame drum has, number one, it has a lot of pitch to it. Mm-hmm. So that's Precisely. Very different than the drum set or a lot of the other, traditional Western instruments.
Having played with those particular guys like Steve Reich and Paul Winter, Steve Gorham, these other different artists who really understand space, understand the use of melody and space in a completely different way. Why do you think, how do you see those guys in the pantheon of good music that came out? Because everyone else seems to fill it up with notes. Mm-hmm. Lots of notes, a lot of complicated things to keep up with, to remember even. And yet you often surrounded yourself with people who could totally change how that space behaved.
Well, it was just a question of music that I enjoyed playing, and mm-hmm. enjoyed being part of. Mm-hmm. And although, I grew up around jazz, and my father was a big jazz fan, and so I heard a lot of jazz when I was growing up. So, that's what I knew. So I wanted to play drum set and, be a jazz drummer when I mm-hmm. came up to New York. But as soon as I heard other ways of handling harmony, for one thing, the idea that you don't have to have these changing chords, mm-hmm. and that mm-hmm. you could stay on one chord, stay on one pitch center for a while. Right. That really attracted me, because it mm-hmm. Made total sense. It felt totally different, rather than the moving textures that you get with chords and the moving blocks of sound. So staying in one place for a while, really, I liked that a lot. And it also fit with the frame drum, because that idea that the frame drum has a strong pitch mm-hmm. is important, and it clashes with the idea that you have these chordal movements, and mm-hmm. the pitch in the percussion chair can be a problem.
Well, you also, when you do your overtone singing, you discuss that about variations in speed. You not only have what's happening with the hands that may be at one observable tempo and speed, but by contrasting with very long, slow tonality against it, you didn't just talk about the melodic aspect of it. You talked about sort of the melody of the rhythm changing as well. The long beat with that slow beat, mm-hmm. or with a quick beat. Sorry.
Yeah. Well, it also goes back to the thing that I just get more and more into as I continue to play is mm-hmm. about synchronization, and mm-hmm. the wider the distance between the synchronizations, the more there's a special quality to something. So in other words, something's going very slow, something's going very fast, and trying to synchronize them and relate those two. That's a big aspect of what I'm interested in, even in my own experience in practicing and playing, but also in teaching and having that be a focus of what you're wanting to do when you're doing percussion or doing drumming.
So teaching is a big part of what I want to share with our viewers about how the pedagogy is involved, both between teacher and student, and then with the technology, obviously. So you have a lot of students who come to you and go to workshops to learn how to frame drum for a range of reasons. How do those initiatives on the level of those students affect their experience from your observation as a teacher, and then what they get out of it in the end? Because again, you've had people who may just do it for meditation, all the way to people who have obviously gone very pro and highly technical. So, what's the path of the student from your point of view as a teacher?
Well, it's, I think, just like with any instrument, like trumpet players have a certain kind of personality, trombone players, and frame drum is the same way. Frame drum attracts a student that is subliminally, at least, more interested in this balance between our male and female sides. I
Good
think
point.
that's a big aspect of the inner world. Anybody that's involved with frame drum, and I think that's a very timely kind of interest, even if it's subliminal or unconscious. This balancing, because we've had such a big imbalance in that area between our male and female sides, and frame drum has that quality that for the males it's got more female energy, and for the females it's got male energy, and it's a balancing thing. And I just think that that's one of the big draws that people are drawn to about frame drumming. And the other thing is this memory, because I think that a lot of people that were playing frame drum in the distant past are again here and interested in getting back into it, because of that aspect of male-female balancing. So I think those are two big parts of it. For the males, it's that getting into the more female side of what drumming and rhythm is about, and for the females, it's the male side of it, which is technique and speed.
Right.
It's a balancing thing, and I think that's a big part of it. And for me, that's really a big factor, is how looking at the ancient frame drummers from pictorial information really inspired me and made a big push and a feeling that I was part of a legacy and part of a tradition of something that had been put down or lessened over the years, especially with Western music. We really didn't have that aspect of drumming in the music
and also the standard at which students are held. I've lived in Ukraine now for over 4 years, and I feel closer to my Indian roots with the way in which my guru would not let me fail type of concept, that there's a drive to do really, really well. And so it shows up in the outcome of the music. But also I will run into young people who are learning what's called Kabzari, the Kabzar bard music, if you will, for less than a better term, bard. And some of them are really, really into it. I mean, it's an honor to carry on the teacher's tradition in a very authentic way. But you and I both know that's dying in the world. We have a YouTube world where people very quickly can learn how to play in 5 or something. But I'm concerned that they don't really get like the flavor out of it. That much like a tabla teacher would go, no, slow down, hold on. See, you're just counting numbers. You have to feel this, And we both had Subhash Chandran, a fantastic, amazing teacher. And that's not how he would talk, That's not how these other teachers would talk to us. It's a much more organic side. So tell me a little bit about, especially as a Western guy, we're both from Texas, how you feel that we've learned from those types of traditions to what we do to bring that forward, those great masters, no less.
Yes. I think the biggest thing for me, what's still a big influence for me to this day, is how the voice can be involved and kind of without saying anything, without even having to explain anything, but just get the voice involved. And because in the West, as far as the teaching, the teachers of all the other instruments, except for drums, always say, "Sing what you play," So there was this underlying factor, that the recognition that there should be a vocal component to whatever you're doing when you're playing an instrument. But in terms of rhythm, we never developed a coherent rhythm language that we could apply. And the rhythm language that we developed in the West, for teaching, involves numbers. And
Yeah,
numbers,
it does. It feels generic, distant.
Yeah, and numbers is the wrong part of yourself when you're doing music. It's the logical, calculating part, and the voice, when it's used in that way, stimulates that aspect of who we are. Calculation, intellect, and that's not the best thing to have to be immersed in. And it's caused a lot of problems, especially for the people that are most immersed in Western music, which is symphonic players.
Right.
So that aspect of it is a problem, because teaching rhythm with numbers is, what you're talking about. You lose the feeling aspect of it, the intuitive aspect of what rhythm is all about. So having that drum language, which is, I was first exposed to it somewhat with the Arabic material, because they would, doom taka doom taka taka ta. They would sing a simplified version, and then once I also was exposed to the South Indian version, which is very extensive and can basically do whatever you want to do rhythmically. You can vocalize it, and having that conjunction, that sing what you play for a rhythmist, means you have a drum language to draw upon. And that activates the same part that all sound materials activate, and that music, those constructions of sound particles, that really is enhanced by using that kind of drum language. So I still, that plus when I learned about, was exposed to the overtones, which is another, it's like a slow version of the quick version that the drum language has. And having those two balancing, I think, have been a big part of the style that I do, and also the teaching aspect of using the vocalizations to help get inside the feeling of the rhythm.
When I think about your albums, Rhythm of the Chakras, when I always imagined you taking the time to explore both the rhythm that you're actually applying, the groove that you're applying, but I know you're a big guy about textures, because even now I live in this war and I have all your albums on my phone and I know them very well. I've listened to them for many, many years, and I'm always stunned by how quickly the textures and timbres change between takes. So you have a few songs, even you've basically same composition ultimately, but different arrangement with different instruments, bringing out more flavors and textures. So how do you explore those sounds and rhythms in the sense of consciousness, like you did those for those particular albums, when you're trying to hit that meditative state beyond simply performance state?
Yeah, I think for me, the way that I got into that was the idea that there's energy centers in the body, and that the drum and the voice can activate different places in the body
Mm-hmm.
that, different traditions, the Indian tradition has chakras, and the Asian traditions have other names for those energy places.
Mm-hmm.
So finding ways to localize the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
In other words, localize what it feels like in this part of the body or in this part of the body or the lower body, etc. Finding
Right.
ways to localize the feeling so that there's a stimulation of that area and then exploring that stimulation.
Mm-hmm.
And, through the voice and through the drum and through rhythm, all of these things are ways that we can really uh, explore what specific feelings are going on in the body when we're playing and when we're making music and we're making sound and exploring rhythm. So uh, all of that goes into the soup of
Right.
what that exploration is about. And you know, the overtones, the cycle, and that's another thing that I know that the Indians don't really explore that in the same way. In other words,
Mm-hmm.
they're not using the voice to explore the cycle
Mm-hmm.
in the sense of vocalizing the cycle while you're playing. And so
Right.
that's one of the things that I've done for a long time that really has been a big influence on me.
I really like, for instance, with internal combustion, as I was trying to expand beyond my guitar playing days of this shoulder, I have this beast that's got so many parameters to stay within, and I got
Uh,
freed on this other one.
yeah,
And I would listen for your cues, as I
yeah,
would listen to these recordings of okay, so I'm in a 8 8 9. Okay, so I got the 8 down, I got the 10 down. Okay, that's Samai, and I would play Samai albums, a lot of Samai albums for weeks, just to internalize Samai, and then I'd come back and I'm still trying to figure out, well, how does Glenn decide cues? When is he, like what were these things? And you seem to always have, even without an improvisation,
mhm,
like there was a time live where you would do it one way and then the next time you may do it completely different because the expression was there. And I think that that's one of the beauties of what I've always found to be your genuine style, what wound up being the Glenn
mhm.
Velez compositional style.
Yeah. I mean, I still use those cues, and I just, I'm always inventing new ones,
Mm-hmm.
and that's something that comes up. Uh, Not for me personally, but for the connection between others when you're
Sure.
playing. That allows for this nonverbal communication that goes
Right.
on in any great music, in any fun music. And so I have a class now on Mondays that's local people around this area where I live in
Mm-hmm.
New Jersey, and called the Orion Drum Ensemble.
Nice.
And we just been together for about a year, just every Monday getting together and playing. And they were learning, frame drumming, and
Mm-hmm.
developed a whole new set of cues for that situation.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that interaction, it's like the interaction that happens in jazz or in any kind of
Sure. Right.
improvisatory music, where you are put in the situation where you need to listen to really fully be part of the experience,
Right.
and you don't know what's coming. That excitement of being of listening for what's next and having to be uh, uh, stimulated by that kind of waiting for what's next. And so I think that's a big part of the community aspect of frame
Гель-бустер
drumming in
Mineral
this style,
89 від Віши.
Right.
that
700 годин
those
пружності та
cues
зволоження шкіри в
trigger
одному флаконі.
going in different directions.
Our good brother is still there, Yusuf Sharana. We have a lot of people that I'm so thankful to know because of you, and they've been there since the beginning. So let's talk about how the circle that was the frame drum circle in, like, say, the mid 80s into the 90s, how that is compared to today, where there's festivals and endorsements even and things like that. We didn't have those things back then, but workshop packages, etc. So who were the Glenn Velez Posse members back in the 80s that were so vital to getting here?
Well, the people that were involved in my drum groups back in the beginning. As soon as I realized I need somebody to play with, I'm doing, I'm having fun playing with other musicians, but I need some other frame drummers to play with. Then I started to teach so that I could have other players to play with. And Lane was obviously played a big role in spreading the word, and really she connected up very powerfully with the idea that women were these ancient frame drummers. A lot of the ancient frame drummers were women. So that really inspired her deeply in terms of what frame drumming is all about. So Lane and, of course, Randy Crafton was
the great Randy Crafton,
frame drummer for many years. And Yusef came along a little bit later, and Shane Shanahan also has been a very prominent exponent of frame drumming, because he plays with Yo-Yo Ma and that very
Silk Road,
popular group, Silk Road group. And these are people that really took in the beauty and the power of this and the special. And
our resident professor, Scott Robinson.
And Scott Robinson, actually, yes, of course. Yeah. So, all of those people were big proponents. The other thing that happened was there was a guy, I don't know if you remember him, Jerry James.
Of course, Interworld. Yeah.
Interworld. And he put out that video called Fantastic World of Frame Drums.
I still have that VHS, and my kid was 7 months old when I was learning to step in 7. He's 32 now.
And we're going to watch a little bit of that in a moment.
Yeah, he did. It was an interesting world that Dad brought home, where the walls were filled with frame drums because of a video cassette. And Mike Henry, who ran the Houston Percussion Center, featured your workshop there. We used to have Interworld and CMP recordings on the shelf, because it was the only two labels who sort of gave drummers of an interesting style their room.
Yeah, exactly. But the other thing that happened from that, which I was not aware of, is that those video cassettes got into the hands of people in Turkey and in Germany and Europe. And I had no idea about that. And many, many years later, through the Tamburi Festival with Murat.
Murat's great, yeah.
Murat and Andrea Piccioni. Those guys tell me stories about first seeing that video cassette. And, not having any frame drum information up until that point about this, especially about a composite style. That was big, and also in Turkey. So some very prominent drummers that I met at the Tamburi Festival told me about seeing that video and, it really changing their direction. So I was not aware of that until 20 years after the fact, that there were people, different parts of the world that were seeing that video. So Jerry James also played a big role, because that video seemed to spread the word in a more far-reaching way than just seeing me play live or hearing the recordings. And hearing the recordings and not knowing how the sounds were being produced if you hadn't seen me play.
Right. That was a big deal also, because both with your playing and certain musicians, like I'm a big fan of the guitarist Michael Hedges, some of these guys who we used to only see in, or hear in recordings in we would try to figure out if that was two hands doing one instrument. That must be overdubs. And the liners would say no overdubs. And then we would finally see them. And now we're in a YouTube generation where all that mystery is gone. And I'm a wee bit sentimental for some of the albums of like tabla or panala gauche level LP stuff in the early days that we don't get that now. It's all immediate. You know what the instrument might do and might not do, but it is what it is. I mean, God bless that it evolved and it grew, and now there's frame drummers all over the world.
Yeah. No, I really noticed that, teaching at the schools and seeing the drummers come in and playing the pandero and how did you learn? I got the techniques on YouTube, So, but it's still all about personal exploration, until you go through that personal journey of discovery, that's really where it's at.
Well, that's one of the things that's inspired me to do these videos is that I've been blessed to know you and a lot of great musicians, and I'm going to mention a couple of them here before we're done that I think changed not only my life but yours, like Zakir Hussain and others. But the beauty of them is that they always said, I do what I do because I like to do this, and then they would turn around that mirror on the rest of us and say, you're free to be great at what you do on your terms and explore what makes you say that way. So how would a frame drummer who doesn't want to be a copy of Glenn Velez or a copy of someone that they watched who played something keep finding that exploration? What's some keys to finding their personal path, their personal voice on the instrument? Well,
I always go back to that word enthusiasm and where it comes from, in theos, in spirit.
Wow, nice.
And finding the turn-ons that allow you to feel energized about your music and about what you're doing is really the key, because that energy that is directed in a place where you want to go is really what we're all riding on. And for everybody that's into music, that enthusiasm is the driver for practicing and exploring and discovering and not being satisfied with where you are, always wanting to go to the next place.
And how do you do that? How does that still manifest for you? Because like I still practice my snapping technique, and I remember you telling me years ago how you saw it with two fingers, this way, but then you thought it might as well be four, so you had an impetus to take it to centipede level, as we call it sometimes, where it's really natural. But that's what you're saying is like, if some little technique comes up, just go for it, get into it, right? What's that like for you? Where do you keep digging into the new stuff?
I still follow the path of getting my body involved in doing the stepping in cycles, and the voice, using the voice to intone the cycles, synchronizing the voice and the stepping and the drumming, and having the drumming be that last stage in synchronization. Those still are the main forces that are pushing me forward, is how to synchronize those aspects and how to discover new ways to. And with the frame drum, I really think that one of the powers of the frame drum is its simplicity. That very simplicity is what allows the individual to be stimulated for creative work and finding something new. And no matter who you are, if you apply yourself to the frame drum, you're going to discover something new and something that only you know about. So I think that's.
Do you think we could get world peace with these instruments?
Yeah, well, I think that it would make a big difference. It would shut down. It helps to de-emphasize our intellect. And that's not a popular. That is not a popular way of doing things. De-emphasizing the intellect. But that's what we need. We need that other parts of who we are that are about spirit and about breathing and about feeling the body. And the intellect is important, but it's overriding a lot of the other parts of ourselves that we need to generate more energy around.
Yeah. I mean, I really think it's wonderful what the instrument brought for you. I hope you experienced it as well as believe you did.
Mm-hmm.
When I was here, I've been here through this war, and one of the biggest gut punches I received was the news we lost Zakir Hussain, because I used to see all of his concerts in Houston
Mm-hmm.
a lot, and he was as you know, he was such a sweet and generous human being.
Yeah.
But trying to explain to people what it meant when I said one man human UNESCO. I said, no, you have to understand, I know a lot of masters, and they're all good masters. But like occasionally there's just that one particular person here and there that's just blessed differently. And reason why is because as much as Zakir is a beautiful human being, he showed us that we could be that. He reminded us to just enjoy ourselves. And that's what I felt was sort of the thing I thought about him, was that, mega drums and there's one piece with you guys, I think it's called Duet, I believe, and you're playing Rick and
Yeah.
he's playing tabla. And the first time I heard that, the dialogue, oh, actually, no, it's called dialogue, isn't it? Now that I think about
dialogue, yeah.
it. Dialogue.
Yeah.
But these connections, I mean, who were some of the greats that you are just, in hindsight, very, very thankful that you got to share some stage with them doing those things? Because I think the combinations have been incredible. Rabi Abu Khalil, there's just so many. But what are yours? Because I've got a bunch of my own favorites with you.
Well, in the drumming world, I think, Zakir is unique.
Yeah.
I really agree with you that
Human
his,
UNESCO.
yeah, his combination of joy and facility,
Yeah.
is really unique. So, yeah, so sharing the stage with him was, amazing, and I really enjoyed the couple of tours that I did with that ensemble where I got to play with him and
Right.
just witness and be a part of what he brought to the world. So, uh, I mean, there's so many people. Howard Levy.
Absolutely, Howard Levy.
Yeah, is I'm still a big fan of him, and
If he hadn't
also,
left the Flecktones, I would never have known who you were.
yeah, that's right.
He went where?
Yeah,
To
and
play with who?
I remember the first time that I met Howard in the
Cool.
backstage at Ravinia at the
Right,
music festival outside of Chicago,
right.
and we just started playing I showed him a tune in 11 or 9, and he just ate it up, and I immediately said, I'm working on an album, you want to participate in that, and so we found a way to do that. Also Eugene Friesen,
Absolutely.
our group, the Trio Globo. Those two guys were really, I like to use the word kindred spirits, because we're kind of the same age, similar, and we grew up in the same milieu of America, and hearing many, many different kinds of music,
Right.
and just this big melting pot of influences. So, and playing with Pat Metheny also was a wonderful
Yeah.
experience. Doing the recordings and doing a couple of different projects with him. That was fantastic. He was also just a combination of intuition and facility that is unique. So, and playing with Steve Reich, the music, was very, very powerful, and it followed that back to that idea of these chordal movements slowing down instead of
Right.
being so quick, but taking one chord and stay hanging out there for 5 minutes, So
Right.
any kind of music that does that, I really like. I think the slow down experience is very, very important for our times, for our cultures.
It doesn't surprise me that Sufis use frame drums. When I think of the type of spiritual movements in the world that are attracted to these kind of rhythms or these kind of sounds, we're very close to that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah.
Direct experience with the sound instead of a distant experience from it,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Last thing, because I think this is pretty much why I know you at the level I do know you. The industry evolves and evolves and evolves. And one of the things that I remember so well about when we first really met was that the record label that had several, I don't remember the number at the time, 7 albums, I think. Mm-hmm. A big chunk of your albums decided to go do something else. And you had to change everything about how you approach the industry. Where are we at in 2026 from Glenn, who did hand dance, when it comes to how that industry's changed, what it puts on you now, and the experience that you had back then?
Well, I mean, the industry has become the individual musicians.
Right.
It's all put on our expertise in business and expertise in making CDs and records, because we have to do it basically using our own energy. I think for many musicians experience that, So the industry has gone somewhere else.
Right.
They have a whole other priority. And so it's about making your own albums and creating your own themes of what's important. I have an album that I've been working on for a couple of years.
Cool.
Called Cosmic Dog.
Cosmic Dog, yeah. I heard that was coming. Yeah, right.
Yeah, so, I'm finishing that up, but that's a question of me putting it out and me selling it through my website. But that is really where it's at. It's like, especially since the pandemic, there's less live performance opportunities and certainly less industry as far as the recording industry, interest in more niche kind of music. So it's about generating your own work and generating your own audience, and feeding the enthusiasm that we all have for what we're doing.
Well, I thank you for back a conversation we had in '97, then ultimately created a website in '99 that the label had changed where you were in limbo on those titles, and we had a conversation back then. And I remember I said that I somehow had learned something from Frank Zappa's Barking Pumpkins to own your own name and label. But even then, it was still a myth, because it wasn't 2 more years later. I was still a manager at Guitar Center. I wasn't building websites. And then Glenn Velez was born, and I don't think I even had my own name until after that, when I realized I needed to do the same thing. But, frankly, amongst friends, you delivered a huge web of amazing human beings in our mutual lives as friends that I know they were great to work with you, students who were great to study with you. I mean, as you know, we have sort of friendship amongst the students and the frame drum community that really is in many ways gathered around you. How do you feel about that community after all this, when it was so small at the beginning and now it's worldwide?
Yeah, no, I'm amazed at that spreading of that message and that the feeling and the rediscovery of frame drums. Because it's been 2,000 years since it was really widely spread in communities, So I think there's room for more, and I really think frame drumming and this kind of music that we're doing can really play a big role, and I'm sure it is playing a big, how would you say, hidden
it
role.
is. Here in Ukraine, I have I sent a photo to you of it, but I have the this is the bubon made
Yes.
by Andrei Levchenko. And when you see him playing groups music like System of the Down
Yeah.
on YouTube, it tells you that across the board, the traditions are very much alive, very much in the now. And we actually have a brother who's down in Zaporizhia, in the southeast part of the country, that Patrick sent to me, who also plays your style. And I'll get together with him at some point. We will complete the family circuit here in Ukraine. We have two traditions here, essentially, that are alive. The bubon, which is the mallet playing, is much more like a tipper with hand technique. But the Crimean Tatar players are like our Uzbek and our Turkic players. The upright position, the rhythms are very much similar, and the styles are very similar. In fact, you would almost not tell the difference between an Uzbek doira player and a Tatar daira player. In the sense of the technique. So I promise you, brother, I'm going to film as much of these as I can. I keep telling him, like, well, yeah, I have about 100 of these. That's a bad habit. How many frame drums do you own, good brother? Because I know that you have a hell of a collection.
Well, I cycle through them because
You cycle through them, okay?
because you accumulate so many and you realize, hey, I can't play that particular one, or that particular
Right.
one because I don't have time to play them all. So
Sure.
I probably have about 75 or something like that, between 75 and 100.
I know the feeling.
Yeah.
But brother, I want you to come back and tell me about the album when it's out. I'm very glad to share what you do with people who have been paying attention to my voice, because I said, you won't know what I'm doing without really understanding a whole bunch of amazing folks behind the scenes who, like, I travel through this world listening to your music. I pulled out the frame drum. In fact, I finally debuted the Bowron at a improv group here that's really much like the ones that you'd be playing with. And when I brought it brought back words you said many times. You said, if you pull out a violin, you sort of know what to expect. If you pull out a guitar, you sort of have some expectations. But if you pull this out, who knows where it goes,
Yeah.
And
yeah.
I think that that's a fantastic thing that you brought to our world, my bro.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you for the work you're doing. You're really being a part of a community and enlarging a community that it's important for the world right now. So I really appreciate that. And appreciate
Likewise.
your work.
Stay strong, and let's talk again soon.
Okay. Thank you, Chris.
Of course. Well, did I deliver? Glenn is a fantastic, kind, super hip bro. I've known him since I was a wee lad. When I accidentally kind of fell into, like you heard in the interview, and I've known him so long. It's interesting to have a conversation with someone I know. We know a lot of things. I knew his parents, Henry and Hazel. We both love chicken mole. We're Texas boys. He's from Dallas. I'm from Houston. Once upon a time, Glenn got up and moved to New York and became someone who really knew this shit. And I'm going to play these. I'm going to look at the, if you know me, you'll know how embarrassing this is. This is a little photo gallery related to frame drums I went ahead threw together amongst my friends because I like you. That is my Uzbek doira. This is a long time ago. That is in 1995. That's me. Fuck, I don't remember who I'm helping out on a recording. This is at one of the Percussive Art Society conferences. That's Alessandra Belloni and Arnaldo Vaca. I don't know the young man who's got the drum at the far right. He's a Persian young man that sort of just winded in. And there's Arnaldo Vaca and Alessandra Belloni. Arnaldo, I don't have my videos of him. I filmed this actually in instructional video, but there's a sort of funny story with him. We were in Dallas, and I took him to the X where JFK had been and shot. By the way, let me finish that sentence. But I didn't tell him what that was. I said, "Hey, stand on the X. I'll take a photo." I took a photo. He goes, "What's that?" So that's where Kennedy was shot. What? Fantastic maestro. There's me and Glenn. The year 2000, long time ago. That is the late Lane Redmond. We lost her to cancer, unfortunately. Lane was the priestess, if you will, of all of this. Very dear friend. Alessandra Belloni. I worked with Alessandra for many, many years. There's me in the white outfit with long, scraggly hair. That's Randy Crafton, one of Glenn's top students, and we're like sharing techniques. We're talking about. I'm showing him how the tamborello triplets work. So that's him like playing it back. This group shot is actually something else because I don't think you wouldn't be able to see my cursor, but we have me, then Glenn, Arthur Hull. I'm trying to see Rick Walker. There's a whole bunch of different drummers in there, but also Lane's no longer here. It's changed. There's me showing that tambourine technique. There's the walls of my mid-2000s house with tambourines from around the world. Like they were under everything. When I was ever asked, did I ever play professionally? Yeah. Anyway. A lot of CDs, a lot of music, the Doira. Blah, blah, blah. End of subject. God, I'm in pain right now. It hurts. But I'm gonna do a couple things for you. We're not gonna watch the full video, but I'm gonna show you a little of the clip of the instructional video from a long time ago, and I'm gonna toggle through it. So you're just gonna have to forgive me because I'm gonna be using a physical cursor to play it. And Glenn, if you see this, you know how bad your students are. We have this bad habit of doing impressions. Well, yeah, we're going to explore how to play this in 7. And, I hadn't heard Glenn, and he mentioned Jerry James and Interworld. That's why I'm playing this video. Otherwise, the reason why my performance tonight is actually specifically these videos was I didn't want to borrow videos. I did take the 3 from the Met. So the Met will have to forgive me of the 3 first Glenn videos. But I chose not to take a series of others out of respect to those particular people who filmed. Roles reversed, I would not be upset if someone did a show like this and took a lot of the film that I've put out there, which, by the way, they have. I'll tell you a funny story about frame drums. I had a photo of I have 4 of these, the biggest one. I had a photo of those I put on one of my websites, and I had someone come to me and say, excuse me, Mr. Sampson, you may be committing a copyright infringement on Cooperman drums because that is the photo on their website. I said, yes. Actually, I will do it this way. Hold on. Bear with me. We're already loaded into one of these. I'll see if I can't do it this way. Hold on. Fastest way to do it. Let's see. Yeah, fastest way to do it is me load this. Okay. Ta-da. Okay. So these instruments, I posted these photos up there. I just grabbed the whole photos folder, so I have no idea. Literally, the photos they would see on the website were all in my backyard. This is how you get endorsements as well. You basically just like, I need 3 more of those for the front shot. No problem. Box comes in the mail. And So one of these particular shots wound up on the front of the website. I think it was that one. And you guys having fun yet? Is this fun yet? Bad habit of mine. So I get this email from someone being all Karen on me. If there's a Karen in the audience, forgive me. You know how it is. Well, that's actually my photo. But you can write to Patrick if you have any concern. What is the drum skin made of? That is a very good question, and actually depends on it. So why don't we do this? I'm going to show you a little bit of this video, and we have a lot of drums to cover. So depending on where you're at, you're going to have a different instrument texture. But first, let's talk about how this works. That's Lane Redmond. That is the Egyptian mazhar. The instrument he's playing is called mazhar. The one she's playing is called rick.
Hi, my name is Glenn Velez, and with the help of Lane Redmond, I'm going to be introducing you to the world of frame drums that I've been involved with for the last 10 years or so. Another version of that can be done with just the pads. So happens also on the slap. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the right hand can also stroke with the fourth finger of the right hand.
And by the way, that's fish skin. Amazing. Oh, all that power. A little bitty instrument. 1 second. 1 second. Oh, thankfully I'm not plugged in. Okay. And my wireless. What you think? Now, the little bit, there's another one about Yay Big that he mentioned in the interview. And again, even my Kenjira is too loud. It's a very loud instrument. This big. What do you think? Are you guys having a good time? Welcome. Good evening, Sunday evening. It is closing in on 9 o'clock East Coast time. It is closing in on 4 o'clock. And in fact, I'm going to be seeing light in the sky outside in the near future. But I am far from done. Are you guys enjoying what is going on so far? We've been doing a feature on my longtime friend, my music mentor and teacher in many ways. And there's other teachers to come from another sliver of what I've experienced in life. And in fact, I will tell you, there's a secret hidden code in most of what I fucking do because I have an attitude problem. And that is when people say, what do you know about the Muslim world? Blood. Where do you think these instruments come from? Laura says, you need to get some sleep. I did. It was very hot today. So about mid-afternoon, when the sun was baking this side of the house where I could not edit, I crawled up in my little bed and I sweated. Not heavily, thank God. But it was just, oh my Lord. It is very, very warm. But before we go on to our other artists, I want to play you my other friend who is also amazing, and none of us in this audience can do what she's about to do. She also happens to happens to be married to a very amazing drummer. Well, are you enjoying this? I hope you're having a good evening. It is 4 o'clock in the morning here. We are not done. I am going to show you some other wonderful friends of mine. The community, as I know it, did not exist when I first discovered these odd instrument clusters. In fact, it wasn't really perceived as such. It was, you had the Irish bowrod community, you had people who played pandero in Brazil, you had people who played tamburello in Italy, or the instruments in their tradition, but you didn't have this hybridization happening. You may also have had very clearly borrowed techniques from different instruments, but to turn it into something was a kind of a new thing. So I'm going to jump to my friend Murat, who started the Tambura Mundi Festival in Freiburg, Germany. He is one of the people Glenn referenced in his interview, saying that, Murat had this video I just showed you a segment of, and, got into the idea of hybridization, and it became its own vocabulary. So let's enjoy some music from Murat, one of my good buddies out of Germany, and I hope you enjoy. Just beautiful, isn't it? Wow. So, Birant is why we have the next two big segments because of Tempora Mundi. And this means a lot because I am the prodigal son who's not been to Tempora Mundi. And now I live in Europe, so maybe in the near future we could do so. Actually, Marat will also be participating in the rebirth or exchange of the rebirth. Let's see if we still have it right there. Hold on. I am not getting any audio. You guys able to hear me still? Audio. There we are. Okay. So we built. I'm sorry. I'm sitting here tinkering with the OBS tools. So yeah. So a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, I happened to throw this free website together just to lay these items out, and I only have 2 of them loaded in right now, just as a reference point. But all these instruments I'm telling you about, there's a site that will lay them out. I am the guy who worked with all of them. I worked with all of them. There is no one else like what I have done in that category, to be honest with you. There are people who have gotten into drums, and there's some pretty close, peers in different categories. But there was no one that was the web guy for all the frame drummers, which is the weirdest metal to put on your shelf. But alas, it is my shelf. So welcome. We are not done yet. I'm going to play a little bit more from Glenn, but it's because it leads into some solos with Marat. And then we will be moving into some music with Zohar Fresco, Andre Paccioni, Riz Silva will be up next. Coming up, we got some Ukrainian music, Indian music, Uzbekistan, and a big, big finale. We are just beginning to get warmed up. I hope you're enjoying it, because it's going to take us long to watch. And actually, it took me a lot longer to put together than it will be to watch. Now it's just the watching part. What you think? Are you ready? Can you tell I did world music for a long, long time? Ladies and gentlemen, from Dallas, Texas, Glenn Velez. Denver Monday founder right there, who's coming up in our next session, Laurent.
Thank you, Glenn. Dankeschön. And we make a break and we change the stage. And after the
Well, how is it? You guys are so quiet. I'm sitting here looking at the chat space. I think I put them all to sleep. Would y'all rather me just fire up the Time Warp and bring back the Rocky Horror Picture Show? Did you enjoy that last week? I mean, I think I delivered something interesting. Not that Frank Figluzzi and Brian Karam and Mark Zaid and Sean Penner and these other folks are not interesting. They are entirely interesting. That is what we do all week, right? We work all the time on the news, the serious shit, the stress of the day, the chaos of the moment of Trump, 1 second, Putin the next segment. We got lucky that, the missiles and air defense issues tonight, we had none. In fact, in my side view, essentially I'm about to be able to just turn the lights off because it's daytime. I hope you are doing well. Say hi down in the chatty space so I know that you are breathing and you are alive. Or I'll just land the ship and I can do part 2. Would you like to do part 2 tomorrow, or shall we continue? It's your call. But first, here's my friend, April Centron. Longtime friend, master musician. Enjoy. Master Rick player, by the way. Molodets, moja sestra. I think and I could be wrong, I think I have just so much material. I don't know if you know how much material I have, but I'm going to tease you with it to prove to you that you're better off for a part 2 tomorrow night, nearly same bad time. And I want to start as late because, I've got it racked up. But first part 1, Glenn Velez in the can, ready for you to enjoy. I'll tell you what. Let me give you a little idea of where we're going to go. So once upon a time, I don't know if you're ready for that. Are you sure you're ready for that? Do you want part 2? I'm not hearing the enthusiasms. Let's see. Let's see if you really, really want part 2.
So why did you choose the Kanjira?
I mean,
my passion
do
in
you see that head on me? That's 2006. That's me interviewing my teacher. I don't know if you're ready for part 2. You know?
البومش ميديا تقديم هذا زارب شو.
I'm just saying. There's a lot here. I'm just warning you. Oh my God. What have we unleashed? The very first ensemble I recorded here. But I am such a tease. Did you really think I was going to play the full thing for you tonight? No, that's tomorrow night. So, I'll tell you what. I'll make you a deal. I'll make it a really good show. I'm going to get back on the phone with more friends. Because so far, like, you saw 2 hours of the master himself, Glenn Velez. And you just saw a snapshot of some other people who are going to play for you. Do you need another snapshot? I don't know if you need another snapshot. But it's a really good performance. And again, a lot of it based on years of work I've done here. And I do know this topic very, like, ridiculously well. So I thought I'd give it away for free. And if you want to be a paid subscriber to my Substack to make sure that I can do this kind of programming for you where I randomly take some cultural knowledge, and sorry, I don't have more than my website pages, only 2 of them programmed into the browser, but there they are, at least 2. Actually, the website currently has 40 pages in there. I'm currently rebuilding it. There's a lot of them that I'm going to harvest through, a lot of fresh videos, especially for some areas of the world where the traditions are really oblique. They're not really kind of caught up in the frame drum canon. There are some ensembles in like Sierra Leone and the Sakara instrument in Nigeria. There are, I'm going to totally butcher it in Japan, but anyway, so there are some very thin frame drums, like they're literally like just the tiniest little things on sticks played there that are in the catalog. And I've known about these instruments. I don't have in possession every one of those, but in many cases I actually do own instruments from the land that I write about. But this filming, so tonight, thanks to Marat for the film of Glenn in the last segment. and to the Met for the film of Glenn at the beginning. And thanks to Glenn Velez for the part one of our World of Frame Drums. Now that there's so much content, we're going to have to do 2 parts. And to April Cintron for her clip there. Maybe tomorrow we will have more clips from April. And hope to see you then. If there is any news about what's going on, in fact, I can see just outside my window, the sun is beginning to rise here in Kiev. And that means Russia did not win again today. We are still here. And as a result, we are still fighting. We are still kicking. Thank you so much again. Consider being a subscriber if you're not a subscriber. And if you're a free subscriber, if you wouldn't mind, consider doing the $5 level at the very least. If you can do more than that, that's great. I am doing these cultural sides as a way of presenting stuff I really know that I can just give to you. But the real work is the journalism here in Ukraine. I will be going to meetings later this evening remember, it's Monday for me, about captured defenders. I have a big Crimean conference tomorrow to log. So it's a very hectic week ahead of a lot of good work. But that's why I like to do it. I appreciate those who have been supporting. We will see you soon. And as you know how we always do it, Slava Ukraini, Heroyam Slava, I Pizdets Rossiyской Federacji. Thank you for tuning in tonight. I hope you enjoyed the music. See you soon.